Good evening, everybody. My name is David Banks, and this is my final individual presentation for CIT-360. This evening, I'll be going over my program overall and how it works, and the flow of the different packages that I've set up within my sandbox for this class. So, as you can see up on your screen right now, I've got NetBeans up. That's the IDE that I've used. And I'm going to go through first the diagrams that I've made for the different packages. I'm going to actually just focus on this CIT-360 sandbox.java and it's in its menu and backend menu. But I will go over the code behind these other ones, and you'll be able to see their diagrams as well as I go throughout. So this is my first diagram. It's the class diagram, and essentially it's a high-level view of what's going on in my program. So from a high level, we have an actor. Excuse me. And this actor at this point has a choice to run these different options. So there's 5 different options. Right now we're going to go through this one. So essentially, he clicks on run this program, the CIT-360 sandbox, and he inputs his name, and then he immediately is taken to the menu.java, and everything else from there is simply interacting between these two. So whatever option he selects, the backend menu will present it, and once that code is done, it will go back to the menu until X is selected, ending the program. So for a little bit of a deeper view, I've got the sequence diagram right here, and it goes through all of these different methods. So we start off, and the actor comes over, clicks start, and goes to the main menu, which asks for your username. Once the name is entered, these lines pointing to the left are the different options that you have within that program. So we have SQL Connect or URL test, SQL Connect.smtp example, SQL Connect.connect, SQL Connect.purchase ticket company list, SQL Connect.ticket prices, and the last one, while command equals X, and exit the program, which will exit the program. So as we go through all of these, we will go through the data behind them that explains what it outputs back to the user as you're sitting there running it. So this is a state diagram in similar fashion. These are all the different options that you have. Excuse me. We have menu, which displays, and then we have menu that goes to the main menu. You have your different options, which all run back to the backend menu, and then they report back to the main menu until you decide you want to end the program. Your final state is over here. And the last one is my class diagram, which is just a different view of the same materials. As you can see, menu is the main class file, which does most of the interaction. This simply starts. This is the state in which it stays in until it asks for information from the backend menu, in which case the backend menu will send it back, and it will be back in the menu state until exit or X is selected. So that's kind of a high-level run-through of that. So now we're going to go through the code, and then we'll actually run the program so you can see kind of what's going on. We'll run through all the options. So with this CIT-360 .sandbox file, I'm going to open these up. Let me close my other tabs real fast. Those 3. All right, so our initial main method sets up a static string for your first name or whatever name you enter, and then it's pulling in information from the backend menu, and essentially it runs this main method right here. It comes in and asks what your name is, and then it outputs your name. It says welcome, and then immediately it takes you over to the main menu, which is over here in the menu. Once you're at main menu, which is right here, as you can see, I've set up a few different options, which we'll go through when I run the program. But for now, just so you know, this is the HTTP connection test. This is my IO SMTP example. This is the show movie theater times, movie theater list, movie theater prices, and exit program. There is one thing I need to bring up for part of this feature to work. I have XAMPP running on my machine, which is running MySQL and Apache on the back end, so that one of these options, when I go and grab the list, it should be running. It won't just error out. But if it does, that's just another option that I've set up for to do in case it does fail. So I set up a switch case statement embedded inside of a do while statement. I personally like coding these because I feel like they're pretty logical. I'm not so big on if-else statements. They do work and they're better in some scenarios, but whenever possible, I like to run do while and switch case statements because I find them easier to work with personally for many things and for many different reasons. So anyway, as we go through, while you're in the main menu, you have your different options. You have C, I, M, L, P, and X, which we've just gone through. And then once you click them, it immediately takes you over to, this is legacy code, the SQL.connect. It's actually, I renamed it back in the menu. So it would take you to backendmenu.url test. And once we get there, the URL test is right here, and it tries to take you to this URL, which is my personal website that I set up for a different class. And that will test that connection, and then it will output whatever it has found. We go back. The next option we see is SMTP example. SMTP example for now, excuse me, tries to go to the local host on port 25, which is the standard email port, and tries to send out an email to this email address that I've set up, which is my email, to and from myself, and then the subject line is just test. And it will try to send that out. If it does not know how to, the catch statements are IO exception, and it will give you an error message, or it will say trying to connect to unknown host, and it won't know who it's trying to connect to. In other words, if I didn't make the server name localhost and I made it my server, it wouldn't be able to find that server. And I don't believe I have the email portion running at this point, so that's what it will probably say when it tries to send that email. So we'll try that in just a little bit. So we're back to the menu. We have the .connect example, which is right here. This is the connect method, and it's simply connecting to the local host. And this is where it starts pulling the SQL information. So this is where I used Hibernate and a little bit of MySQL. I just set up a database on my own of different movies that were out at the time that I set this up. And it queries, it connects first, obviously. So it connects to the database, or it says failed to make connection. So if it connects to the database, then it tries to query select from movies. So for any of you who've ever taken database classes, you know that select from is a select star from, excuse me, is a very common MySQL and just SQL language when you're querying things. And then if there's any exceptions or anything else happens, it says error in fetching data or error occurred, and then it'll give you a exception of some kind or another reported from the database. Then we have purchase tickets company list. So essentially what this one does is gives you a list of different places you can buy tickets from. As you can see, I just set up my own string list. I didn't set up in a database for this one. So just your different options. You have AMC, Cinemark, Megaplex, Fandango, Movie Phone, all the different places that you can normally buy tickets from, both online and at the movie theater. And the last one is ticket prices, which again, I set up simple string array right here to pull from, just the 4 different options: adult, child, senior citizen, and military veteran. And then of course our last option is X, which breaks the program, quote unquote. It's the last case. It essentially ends the program. And the default for if you select anything else besides these options is invalid choice, select a different option. And then this down here is simply just displaying. So this method is displaying everything that you see above, and as you can see, it's referenced. And you will see this text each time a method is selected, run, and then comes back to the main menu. So I know that was a lot of information, but now let's go ahead and try to run the program, and let's see what it does. See if it does what I say it's supposed to do. So I'll enter my name, Dave. There's the different options like I talked about. So we'll go to the first one, type in a C. I type in the C, it runs this, it queries from my website, just like I thought, and pulls all of the code down for the main website that I have. The next one is the SMTP example. As you can see, it's trying to connect to my local server, which it's not going to find because I do not have it running right now. So I will give it a second to error out. If it doesn't, I'll just stop it and restart the program. Looks like, yeah, it's still trying to find it. So I'll go ahead and restart it just for time's sake. But just know what it would have done is what I explained earlier with that exception where it tells you could not find the local host. Type in Dave again. So next we'll do show movie times. We'll type M. So this is where it's querying the actual MySQL database I have running. And these are the movies that were playing at the time when I wrote this. So as you can tell, these are probably a couple months old. There's Goosebumps, Crimson Peak, Bridge of Spies, The Martian, The Walk, Hotel Transylvania 2, The Intern, Sicario. So I didn't necessarily see these movies, or I don't really necessarily know anything about them. I just pulled them from a list I found online from a local theater by me of what was playing at that time. So the next one is L, which is the list of theaters that are places you can buy tickets, essentially. So as you can see, that's the string that I explained before that it sets up. And then P is for prices. So it's displaying all of my ticket prices that I have right there. And then the last one is X, but before I hit X, I'm going to hit an option that is not on the menu. I'll hit A, and it says invalid choice. Please select another option. Okay, how about B? B also does the same thing. So I know my exception handler is working. So now I'll go ahead and exit the program, and that ends the run. And excuse me, these other packages that I've included, I'm not going to go through all of them at a deep level like I did with 360, but I will go through them very quickly. And this app control is one that I will want to integrate more into when I get the chance, because there's a lot of good stuff in here. I basically pulled this out as a to meet the requirement of showing what an app controller is supposed to do. So, but essentially it works a lot the same way, or much similar to my CIT-360 sandbox, where I have the system output prints in the main string. Please type one of these options to get the appropriate view. Now, I don't have as many exception handlers set up in here because it's a very basic program, and that was done kind of on purpose. But here's my controller, and this would basically be the equivalent of what I just went over in my menu in the CIT-360 package. So as you can see, very basic Boolean options set up, and it will query the different. It'll send it to the dispatcher, and then the dispatcher will decide which option was selected, and then from there it will select either the Creed, Peanuts, or Spectre reviews, and display the text. And this is simply just from Rotten Tomatoes. It's just a review I pulled and what audiences and critics thought. So again, it starts out at the app demo, then it goes to the app controller, verifies user, verifies all the requests, then sends it on to the dispatcher, who then decides which option is selected and points it to each one of these. Now, the biggest difference between this and what I did for the CIT-360 is there's no exceptions on this. So once you select an option, that's it. It just ends the program there. So I'll go ahead and run this one now just because it's a pretty quick one. So as you can see, it just simply displays the text. So we'll type in Peanuts. You can see it says Charlie Brown, Snoopy, Lucy, Linus, and the rest of the Beloved Peanuts gang make their big screen debut. Goes on through the view, blah, blah, blah. At the very end, Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences gave it an 83, and critics gave it a 71. So that's it for that. And then you can go back in. Of course, you can run it again as many times as you need to. So this time with Creed, the same thing. actually went to go see Creed, and it was a fantastic movie, which is why audiences gave it a 96 and critics gave it a 93. It was excellent. And the last option that I have is Spectre. You can see it displays Spectre. Now, the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to show you what happens when you type in something else. So the exception is to go directly to, or the default is to go directly to Spectre. But it still ends after that and goes to Spectre view and then does nothing, because of the way I set up the dispatcher. So I have two if statements essentially. So I have if Peanuts is selected, then show Peanuts. Else if Creed is selected, then show Creed. And then just an else statement, which is why it takes you to Spectre, but there's no actual exception, which tells you, sorry, your option is not valid. So essentially, unless you type in Peanuts or Creed, anything else you type in, including Spectre, will display Spectre. So like I said, this was kind of a contrived example just to show the app control designer from a high level. So I believe that's the core of most of my applications. The MVC example was much like the app controller. It doesn't necessarily have to do with my app. It was simply done to provide an example of what MVC looks like. And then the threads are the same way. And the last thing I do have is some unit tests, but they also are very basic, and we're done to help me to fulfill a requirement. So the main portion of my application is this, and this is really the core of it, doing this sandbox right here. Because my original idea was to have dinner and a movie. So I've gotten the movie portion up and working, and I hope in the near future to be able to have the dinner portion working so that you can figure out where you want to go to dinner based on what movie times are and what maybe wait times and some other ideas. So I'm going to go ahead and end my presentation, but I appreciate everyone listening, and I appreciate all of the help you guys have been to me this semester. So thanks. Have a good night.